What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Rip City Rundown podcast. And I know what y'all are thinking right now, especially if you're watching on YouTube. We got three boys here. We got all three of the guys here for this podcast. We're going to talk about Joe Cronin. We're going to talk about the draft. We're going to look back in the past a lot. But first, West, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I am excited to talk about little Joseph Cronin today. See his moves, look at his tenure. But I'm even more excited that Cody is here. Like you said, Cole, we got a full house today. We got the three boys in the building. Cody, it's been a while since you've been on.
I don't even remember the last time I was in a podcast. It had to have been like 5 months ago or something crazy like that. But it's been a very busy year for me personally with school, work, everything like that. But it's great to be back. And like I said, it feels like home. Being on the Blazers podcast, it feels like home. So I'm glad to be home.
Yeah, it's definitely the most fun I have. If you follow RCR Trivia on TikTok or Instagram, you've seen Cody plenty of times. He's been the one that's been grinding the TikToks, getting those out for you. So if you want NBA trivia, NBA content, go check it out. Links in the description, rcr.trivia on both TikTok and Instagram. But like I said in the beginning, we are going to talk Joe Cronin today. We'll be doing another mock draft here in the future, so if you want draft content, you can either go watch me and Wes's mock draft that we dropped. I want to say it was that last podcast? I believe that was the last podcast. Or wait until the next mock draft before the June 26th draft, where the Blazers have picks 7 and 14. But speaking of transactions, like I said, we're going to talk Joe Cronin. We're going to look in the past, not do the future. We're not going to get all this hope and talking about how great the Blazers will be in the future. We're going to talk strictly about what has happened. Because we've looked back, me and West, at a lot of podcasts over the past year, over the past 2 years, and we're very optimistic. And it's really funny looking back on what we thought Joe Cronin could do or would do compared to what he did do. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. West, as a whole, if you had to give one word and one grade on Joe Cronin's tenure as a GM, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for grade, I'm going to fall in the B- range. I'm going to give it B-. The one word I would use to describe his tenure so far would be the word safe. And I think I would use the word safe because there has not been any aggression or any really kind of grab the situation by the neck and make a move from Joe Cronin yet. I know he's been behind the 8 ball in terms of what was left from the previous GM, Neil Olshey. We don't like to talk about him, but I don't know. I would say safe. It's tough because Joe Cronin, I think when you look at each move, which we'll do later, each individual move he's made, I think has very good elements to it, but it's felt very, I don't want to say boring, but very by the book, very boring. Just cleaning it up, man. Like just cleaning the books up. And that takes a while when your previous GM royally messes it up every year since like 2012. So, I mean, there's that. It all started, I'm just going to say this is, not probably shouldn't be saying this right now because it's very reactionary, but it all started when LA walked for nothing. That's when it started.
Yeah,
that's all.
Nice.
Sorry.
I mean, it really started when we drafted Bowie over Jordan or drafted Odin over KD. But Cody, you are, I think if someone's a listener of this podcast, they know you were not happy at Joe Cronin this past summer. You weren't happy at Jody Allen. We're not even going to get into Jody Allen right now. That's not what we're here to do today. We're doing a Joe Cronin podcast, not Jody Allen. But now that we're kind of a year and a half into this rebuild, I mean, really just a year officially into the rebuild, are you still hot with Joe Cronin, or are you more kind of just like, it is what it is, I'm seeing it out?
I think I'm more of it is what it is. That was a year ago. I'm a little more cool-headed at the moment. Last year was probably the most frustrated I've been with the organization in its eternity of my lifetime, at least. And I think West, that grade B- is pretty good. I think I would agree with that. Maybe even C+. I don't know. It's just that, when you're a new GM, you don't want to, I guess, get too aggressive in a way that would potentially get you fired. I mean, we saw like Neil Olshey, he started off doing nothing, and then towards the end of his career, he made some questionable moves like getting Robert Covington for 2 first-round picks.
Which we loved, which I loved at the time.
So like he kind of had to do that because it's like, his career was on the line. So I don't expect Joe Cronin to, I guess, even though I wanted him to do more with Damian Lillard, like from his point of view, it kind of makes sense to stay low and, press the reset button and clean up the mess, even if some Blazer fans didn't agree with it. And I'm going to brighten my light right now. So,
yeah, well, it's one of
can I
those
say-
things. It's one of those things where, and I'll send it to you for what you have to say, Wes, but you always want a GM to be aggressive. Like, everyone would want a guy like the Suns GM, but because he's aggressive. He got KD, he got Bradley Beal. But obviously that doesn't always end up working out. And then also, Joe Cronin, we wanted him to be aggressive 2 years ago. But at this point, like, especially once we get into the moves over the last year, like, you can't get mad or you can't be happy at any of the moves he's made recently because, like, it's just what he has to do during a rebuild. He chose this route. And now, unfortunately, we're going to have to be a podcast where we're like, well, we might not like his moves that he's done. We have to wait and see, because a thing about a rebuild is he's going to have 3-4 years until we know if it was good or not. And if it's not good, then I'm going to be so mad at Joe Cronin because he's going to waste 5 fun years of my life that I could have been watching Blazers playoff basketball. But we won't know until then. But what were you going to say, West?
Well, quickly, I thought you were going to say something else other than fun for a quick second there, but no, I kind of was going to echo what you were saying in the sense that being a GM, or at least in Joe Cronin's situation, you're right, Cody. It didn't make sense for him to come out and be really aggressive because that would have just put the team in an even deeper hole, in my opinion, because you had to go on cleanup duty from what Neil Shea did. And Neil Shea started off being like, guys, I promise you, Nick Stauskas, incredible player. Guys, prized free agent. Obviously, it's Nick freaking Stauskas. No disrespect to him, but it's Nick Stauskas. And so Joe Cronin has been very safe, but you want your GM to be aggressive, but at the same time, you don't want him to like burn your assets to the ground. And so then you put on top of that, you're doing it for a small market team where the margins are that smaller. Look at the Lakers. They can be poop front office for a while. And all of a sudden, LeBron is like, I want to go to LA. And it's like, oh my gosh, this GM is so good. It's like, you just get bailed out by star players. Portland can't do that. Cody, you know why no one wants to go to Portland. We don't have to get into that. but you know why. So I think Joe Cronin, for what he's been working with, what the situation was when he arrived, it's been good. But, you're always looking for the big move, and he hasn't gotten to that part of the test yet. He's still taking his tests right now.
Go ahead, Cody. You got anything?
No, I got nothing. I think we're going to dive into all his moves as he throughout his career. So let's start.
And I think right before we get into it, a caveat here. We're not the top 3 analysts of the Portland Trailblazers. We're not the top 3 reporters. We are the top 3 analysts, I have to say. We're not the top 3 reporters. We aren't behind the walls, inside the walls. We don't know what's going on here. So I want to take that caveat. But at the same time, we are fans of the Blazers, so we could get hot. And Cody, as a fan of the Blazers, this isn't fun. Maybe you're having fun. Are you having fun? Did you have fun going to see Scoot Henderson turn it over on his first ever play in NBA basketball?
I really don't want... I'm sick of... We've never done a podcast together.
I knew you were going there.
We have never done a podcast together talking about playoff basketball. We've never done a podcast with us 3 that were like, Damian Lillard, yeah, he played great today, 37. I didn't like our spread on defense. If we could have trapped Aaron Gordon more on the baseline, then we haven't gone to talk about that ever. All we're talking about is, wow, we have 9 ping pong balls instead of 8. Let's go. If we lose to Charlotte today, I don't care.
Dude, I literally thought about that. How many times have we been on the podcast and the topic is a hypothetical freaking trade piece instead of like actual basketball? It's actually sad when you think about it. Like, I'm over here talking about us getting Joel Embiid like an absolute dumb. And instead, we don't get to talk about Damian Lillard getting trapped at half court against the Pelicans. We have to talk about Didi Louzada, who we just got from the Pelicans.
I mean, you can go back at our thumbnails and it's like, Jaylen Brown, you are a Blazer. Zion Williams to Portland, ? Joel Embiid and Damian Lillard, next future duo. Brandon Ingram to Portland. Mikal Bridges to Portland. Pascal Siakam. It's an ongoing thing, but I guess we'll talk about what's actually happened. And
okay, do you think Joe Cronin, do you think we obviously were upset when nothing happened? And yes, his messaging wasn't great. That's a whole nother thing. He could get docked more points for that, for messaging, which I think he was pretty new to the job. I don't think he handled that well. I think he would say that too. But I also think we as fans, and I'm speaking for myself, but maybe the general feel from the fan base is we really thought that we were going to improve the roster, and Joe Cronin really let us down.
Us three, really thought we were doing it. Just go back and listen to our reaction to getting the third pick last year. Oh my gosh, it was bad.
Oh my gosh.
So there's different ways we can go this or do this. I'm going to ask you which way do you want to do? Do you want to go like in chronological order, or would you like to go, let's focus on the trades, let's focus on the signings, let's focus on the draft?
I think let's go chronological order.
Sure.
So 2021 was the very end. Just for context, we lost to Denver. That was our last playoff series we were in spring 2021. So Neil O'Shea got fired. He got hired the beginning of that following.
Yeah,
the
his
next
first
season.
he became the interim GM in 2021 because even though we lost to Denver and we fired Terry Stotts, Neil O'Shea was technically still our GM until he got fired for being just a terrible person and mistreating people in the organization, which just makes perfect sense for a guy like Neil. But anywho, the first thing Joe Cronin really did was the trade deadline in 2022, and we'll just run through the moves here, and then you guys take it wherever you want to go. February 4th, he trades Robert Covington and Norman Powell for Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, and a 2025 second-round pick.
Okay, here's the thing about that.
I'm just gonna go through all of them.
Finish it.
Then on February 8th, 4 days later, he trades C.J. McCollum, Larry Nance, Tony Snell. Tony Snell, what a name. In 10 years, we're going to be talking like Tony Snell, like we talk about Joel Przybyla. But he trades those three for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, our favorite guy on this podcast, Didi Louzada, Thomas Satoransky, a 2022 first, which I think conveyed to 2 seconds. Could have that wrong, but we didn't end up getting that first because the Pelicans made the playoffs. A 2025 first, and then 2 more seconds. Then on February 9th, he flipped Thomas Satoransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and one of those second-round picks from the CJ trade for Elijah Hughes, Joe Ingles, and a 2022 second. So kind of the big names coming out of there. Justice Winslow, that first-round pick in 2025, Josh Hart, and then at the time, Joe Ingles. So talk to me. Where do we want to go first? What were you going to say, Cody?
Yeah. So Norman Powell, Robert Covington, at the time, 4 years ago, I'm sorry, but that's kind of what we thought what our role player championship caliber team would be. Like we said, we need to bring in defense. Oh my gosh, we got Robert Covington. Let's go. Like the reality is, even looking at it, even in 2022, last year, this year, Rocco and Norm today, I'm not going to say they're nobodies, but they're not starters.
Norm's all right, but Rocco is buns.
Yeah, they're practically nobody. So, I guess keeping them obviously would have been a waste. It just sucks. It's not fair for Joe because Neil invested so much into those guys, and then he's forced to sell them at a point where they had no value. So it's like people are going to view Joe Cronin and be like, "Why did you do this move? We should have sold them for higher or something like
you're
that."
A stock
in reality,
market. You guys love stock market. What do we call that? What did we do?
We bought high and we sold low, folks. That's how you lose money.
It's not what we want to do. That's what we did. And then getting rid of CJ was, just the start of the end of this era, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think in what he got from return from that, I don't think you can be too mad because I don't think any of those guys today would have helped us.
I agree. I think you look at the people we got for CJ, Josh Hart, great player. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had great playoffs. I know we didn't keep them, and that's for other reasons. Nickeil, we didn't even really give a chance, which was kind of interesting in hindsight. But I thought, like you said, Cody, Joe Cronin, Neil Shea got let's just say he got fleeced by Houston. I mean, Rocco were 2 firsts. I mean, police, get out of here with that. But you're trading him at that's the thing. What's so hard about it? I'm sorry. Let me explain my thoughts. What's so hard about it is just because you bought Robert Covington for 2 firsts does not mean when you trade him, he's worth 2 firsts. And I think that trade everyone thought was so bad because we just we bought high and sold low. But that was probably the best he could do. And I mean, Justice Winslow was serviceable. I mean, my man couldn't shoot for anything, but that's neither here nor there. But the CJ trade was good. Got good assets. Got Jeremy Grant from that. I know, Cole, you told me that earlier. Jeremy Grant came from the CJ trade. Maybe Jabari Walker came from the CJ trade, possibly. Maybe. I don't know.
But yeah, that's all from the 2022 trade deadline. I think looking back, I think a theme, what we'll see, or at least a theme of two things is we make good trades, but then it's almost like it's a step back. Like we got Josh Hart, but when we ended up trading Josh Hart, it resulted in Chris Murray.
I have a question for you guys, and maybe the answer is here as we keep going through. But do you think Joe Cronin has made a single? And I'm not. This is not a roast on Joe Cronin. This is simply I'm asking a question. Do you think Joe Cronin has made a single move that like was a proactive move, or do you think everything up to this point has been reversing the wrong from previous years?
I think one move, and it's the Jeremy Grant. Like that was a great move. We had arguments like that's the biggest trade they've made in the Dame era, which is so crazy to say. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mix of I think all his moves pre-Jeremy Grant trade was cleaning up, and then all his moves post-Jeremy Grant trade was setting up for the rebuild.
Yep.
Where he could have gone a different way, but he decided to go one way. At the end of the day, I'm glad he chose one way and didn't toe this line in the middle. But June 23rd, our next stop on this little journey is he drafts Shaedon Sharpe with the 7th pick, and he drafts Jabari Walker with the 57th pick. Looking back on that, Cody, would you change anything about that draft today?
I wouldn't. I think Shaedon Sharpe was a great pick for 7. I think if there was to be a redraft for 2022, he would move up. It's unfortunate that we dropped, I think, 2 spots that year, but in reality, you have 7. I think that's the best thing you could have gotten. I love Shaedon Sharpe. I think he has a chance to become an all-star one day. I still think he's has a lot to improve on, and he's obviously surprised all of us his rookie season. And even though he's injured a lot last season, I think he overall had a pretty decent season and grew more. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy with that draft.
Yeah, I think Joe has done a good job drafting throughout his tenure so far. It's weird. I think I'll give Neil credit. I think he was pretty good at drafting. I mean, he drafted Dame. He drafted CJ. But I wouldn't change anything about that draft class. It's okay. Sure, I would like to draft Jalen Williams at 7 in hindsight, but I mean, I think if you put Sharpe in that Oklahoma City team, he looks pretty darn good too. Mm-hmm. Not to knock on Jalen Williams, but like you said, Cody, Sharpe has still so much potential. He's only in his 3rd year, going to be in his 3rd year coming up. So I don't know. I'm a fan of Mr. Shaedon. Yeah,
I think looking back, it's a great draft. I mean, I more so look at it as the Jabari Walker pick than the Shaedon pick, just because I think there's a lot we need to learn about Shaedon still. I don't want to be like too quick to jump on. I agree he can be an all-star, but I mean he was hurt his entire year last year, so next season's going to be a big year. If he doesn't show me something like serious, then I'm going to start thinking like I don't think Shaedon's going to be one of the core pieces of the future.
That's the theme that you just said. We still need to figure out. But that's like everyone in this freaking franchise. Like, is Chauncey a good coach? We don't know. Is Joe a good GM? We don't know. Is Scoot good? We don't know. We don't know anything.
It's a tough spot to be in. It's a tough spot.
Tough spot.
It's not fun.
Nope.
But continuing on the summer, summer of 2022 was the summer where we really think like, okay, we reset. We got all these assets with Sharpe. We think Anthony Simons is going to be this great partner with Dame. We re-signed Anthony for $100 million, and then we go to not great signings. Yusuf Nurkic, we re-signed 4 years, $72 million, and then we signed Gary Payton II. At the time, loved that signing. We loved that signing at the time. That turned out to be terrible, but even at the time, or even with the signing being terrible, we're still in a spot where we could build around Dame and we could go for a championship. I do want to mention, because I mean it's a huge piece, August 29th, 2022, someone got waived. Who was it? Do you guys want to take any guesses?
August, say it again.
August 29th, 2022. Who got
CJ
waived?
Ellaby?
Didi Louzada.
Didi.
2022, that was the year we started off as the 1 seed, like 10 games, 12 games in, and then we ended up not making the playoffs. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that was insanely disappointing. Like, I think I've been, I'm not going to say accurate, but like decently accurate, like not surprised with my general just Blazer predictions that time was an outlier. That time I generally thought we were a playoff team for sure. And that year we just sucked. And I don't even think Joe was in necessarily rebuild mode. Like that was kind of an awkward stage because like you have Damian Lillard, we didn't have CJ McCollum, but you have this new signing, Jeremy Grant. You're re-signing some guys. You bring in Gary Payton as defense like the fans want. Of course, he doesn't play because he's a whatever. But regardless, like I feel like Joe could have either that was a pivot point right there where he could have actually like his whole future could have been being aggressive and building a championship team if that team was competent, but they weren't.
Yeah, I think if you see like Dame and Anthony not get injured mid-season and we do end up staying healthy, we do get a 6th seed and go to the playoffs, I think we're talking completely different today. I think that's a pivot point. I think the trade deadline, of course, is a pivot point. And then, of course, the final like nail in the coffin was, of course, the draft. But that trade deadline is when we traded Josh Hart for Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, and the 2023 first-round pick, which turned into Chris Murray. Looking back, that trade stinks. Even if Josh Hart was leaving, like I'm notoriously not high on Chris Murray at all. I don't think he's going to be anything for this team in the future. We traded a second for Matisse Thybulle, and then we traded Gary Payton, just cut costs for Kevin Knox and 5 second-round picks. But yeah, that Josh Hart move. I mean, it in turn, like Jeremy Grant is a part of the CJ trade, which good, and this is bad. But I think the Josh Hart thing and I think the Nickeil Alexander-Walker thing is just one of those things where it's like those are 2 bad moves. You trade Nickeil Alexander-Walker for Joe Ingles and Elijah Hughes. Like none of those 2 guys have any sort of the upside that Nickeil does. Like why is Joe Ingles on your team when you're tanking the rest of the year? He never suited up one game with the Blazers. I don't even know if he ever came to Portland. I'm being dead serious.
You know, these guys like Joe Ingles, Festus Ezeli, Pau Gasol, like
they're all in the same boat. They are names that never play for the Blazers. And then also Josh Hart. Like, yes, every time you bring up the Josh Hart trade, people are like, well, he was leaving in the offseason. I think, for one, that's not a guarantee because if you end up going for this all in and you trade the 3rd pick and you get a guy like Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart's probably staying because he's best friends with Mikal Bridges. That's obviously a fantasy land, right? But like, if you get a great player and you're clearly a good team, Josh Hart could very well stay. He could also leave though. And then what you traded it for? You traded for the 1st-round pick, and like at the time, Cam Reddish in a 1st-round pick, like was kind of excited about Cam Reddish. But even if Cam Reddish is buns, which he ended up being, that's still good. Getting Josh Hart at the time, Josh Hart's value was lower than it is now. He's much better than he was. But getting a 1st-round pick's good. But you use it on a 23-year-old rookie in Chris Murray for a team that's not like Chris Murray's one of those guys that maybe plug him in on a playoff team and he could maybe give some spot minutes. He's one of those rookies. He's not a rookie that you stick in a rebuild and hope he's good. I'm not. Yeah.
And the 23rd pick in the 2023 draft, which was Chris Murray, when everyone was shocked that we actually went through and drafted Scoot, and we were like, oh my gosh, is Dame going to leave? And trading 23 and Ant was like our last hope, and we didn't do that either. And it was like a double whammy. We're drafting this 23-year-old who, you know, I like him. I know you're not high on him, Cole. I think he's fine, you know.
What's the next trade, Cole?
Oh, before I do that, I just want to see who was on the board for instead of Chris Murray. Like, I see Ben Shepherd. I recognize that name at least. There's obviously not a lot of guys like this draft. Once you get past Chris Murray, is not great, but I think that's just it. It's a classic. It's what you said. It's just a safe pick. There's nothing sexy about that pick, and you basically traded Josh Hart for Chris Murray. That is stinky. The next big thing that Joe did is, of course, draft night, June 22nd, 2023, draft Scoot Henderson with the 3rd pick, Chris Murray with the 23rd pick, and Ryan Repair with the 43rd pick. Just going back to that night, solely in a vacuum on the draft itself, is it a good draft? Are you happy with the picks that were made? Not with why we made the picks or what happened because we made the picks. Solely the picks.
It's kind of early for me to say. Scoot, you know, we just need to wait more. I mean, he's a 2004 kid. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
But I can't say I'm mad or happy yet. I guess, if anything, I'll say neutral.
Sure.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm Okay, again, is this like at the time of the draft or now?
Dude, I don't know. I think both scenarios you're not any more than 60%
What names are
satisfied.
after Scoot that were like, okay, we should have taken them?
No one.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so then we shouldn't be mad.
Scoot was the obvious pick. It's truly just like the
That's the
sourness.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like Josh Hart getting a first for him at the time, and okay, it was a young player. It ended up being Cam Reddish instead of Miles McBride. If you want to debate that, fine. But Joe Cronin is like he's passing the test with these trades or these picks, but at some point you have to like strike gold.
Exactly.
And that's really hard as a GM. And maybe this year in the draft, he strikes gold with Cody Williams or Saloon or Resal Share, whoever it is. But I'm thinking about it like if you pick anywhere from 20 to 20, from 20 to 30, if you pick as a playoff team, like you're not gonna get the next star. That's why you have to hit on your high draft picks. That's why the Celtics are in the finals because they back-to-back years picked Brown and Tatum, while the Lakers picked while the Sixers picked Markel
Simmons and Fultz. Yeah,
Crazy.
not great. I think as a whole, I'm gonna look back on June 22nd, very sour.
Okay, can I say something quick with that? June 22nd, 2023 might be the biggest, most important date in our fandom's history. It could be that as like a franchise turning point. I mean, it's either that or it's Dame's rocket shot or the thunder shot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking like shaping the franchise's future, it's by far this. Like, this is truly in our lifetime. We've been a fan for 2, now 3 different eras. We were young, but we were alive and we knew what was going on in the Brandon Roy era, pre-Dame. Then we have the Dame era, and now we have what's hopefully going to be the Scoot era. So,
yeah, I mean that time was awkward. Joe was lying behind his teeth. He was like, "We're gonna have a great team next year," but then when we drafted Scoot, he's like, "We're gonna keep him, build around him. He's a great player." It's like, choose one or the other, buddy. We're not stupid. Like,
and Scoot, like in his draft interview after he got drafted, he's like, "Yeah, I think like me and Dame can do some good things like with each other. Like, you're not fooling anybody."
Yeah, that's
you ain't playing together.
Like, just a weird night and all, and it makes it worse that Scoot's been unfortunately not great so far. Of course, he can be great though.
I think So June 22nd was the date that signified this upcoming era. The date that I think signified the Dame era was Matthews going down against the Grizzlies.
You're saying the Dame era was over, or the Dame era started then?
Like, basically, that was why Aldridge left. I thought because like he wanted.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay, sure, Aldridge leaving is that, but it stemmed from the injuries against the Grizzlies. But regardless, big day. June 22nd, 2023.
Big summer. What happened after that, Cole? I think we know what happened after that.
Well, I wrote this down, but like looking back, it's so irrelevant because I haven't heard this guy's name since we waived him. We waived Trendon Watford weirdly on June 30th. That was weird. That was so weird at the time because we were like, maybe we're making room for a trade. Of course, our optimism hats are always on. Then July 7th, we re-signed Matisse and we re-signed Jeremy Grant. I think looking back, it's one of those where it's like, sure, you do it. It doesn't matter. That cap was going nowhere else. But at the same time, it's like Jeremy Grant and Matisse Thybulle don't really provide value for this team going forward when it comes to the rebuild. And then, of course, September 27th, the big day, we trade Damian Lillard, Yusuf Nurkic, Keon Johnson, and Nasir Little. And in return from all that, we get DeAndre Ayton, Drew Holiday, Toumani Camara, a 2028 and 2030 first round pick swaps, and then a 2029 first. And then we flipped Drew Holiday for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, the 14th pick this year, and a 2029 first. So in all, let's just say we traded Dame and Nurk, because I don't think Keon and Nasir were tipping scales here. Dame and Nurk for DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, the 14th pick in this year's draft, 2 2029 first, and then 2 swaps, which I would equate to maybe like 1 first. So kind of like 4 first and some good players. Looking back on that, this is probably what everyone is really wanting to know. Are you happy with that trade? from a Blazer perspective, I think we can agree it was a good trade for Dame's perspective.
I think it was, in terms of value, a solid trade because Dame has not many years left. So to, give him up to a championship team, because he's happy to, I think we as an organization, the least thing we can do is put him in a place where he's happy, and receive all that in return is solid. But obviously at the time, and I'll still say this to this day, and even when I'm 70 years old and we won 20 trillion championships, I still would say 2023, we should have went for it with Dame, because I don't think we'll ever get something more gifted than that at the time. But the trade itself, sure, it's fine. And I'm not going to say, Joe Cronin, you suck because of that, pretty much.
I think it was a good trade. The trade's kind of still playing out in the sense of like Brogdon here. We'll see what happens with Brogdon this summer. I went on record a month ago saying if Brogdon's on the team in training camp, we'll have major, major problems. But I think the reason why it was a good trade is because the narrative all summer was Miami's dog water offer. I'm talking about like poop on the street in Portland type of offer. It was that type of offer. And so Joe Cronin, I think, played the markets well, kind of getting Drew. People were like, what? And then we flipped Drew. I know Robert Williams has been hurt. I know Malcolm Brogdon isn't in the future of this team. But in terms of what it could have been with Miami, I think, or even, whatever team it was, I think he got the best offer he could. And you can't blame Joe Cronin for a fantasy better offer not being there. I think you got pretty good.
I think looking back at this offer, you can look at it in two ways. You can say the package itself, there's no guy you can build around. You would obviously love to get a guy you can build around in a trade like this. And I look at it like Ayton and Kamara are part of our future. And I think those are two solid role player pieces to have on your team. I think the picks we got are very solid. We end up with a 14th pick this year. Of course, the draft sucks. So that's not a valuable pick for Boston. But for us, it's fairly valuable. And then 2 more firsts and then 2 more swaps. I think the Brogdon and Robert Williams piece, I hope Brogdon gets us a first. I got to think his value is super low, not only because he's getting older, but he played his whole season in Portland. Playing in Portland doesn't help your value probably. And then Robert Williams, we probably should have known it was going to happen, but he got hurt. And I really hope he can put together a half a season of health so we can flip him at the deadline. So that's that. You can say, got a couple good pieces. But I'm so serious. That's best case scenario for Robert.
You're right. But
looking at it from another lens, you got off a Nurk contract. You just washed your hands of Nurk. Hate to say it, you had to do it. And then also Dame was obviously worse this year than he was last year. So I don't think you were ever going to get an offer like this again.
I think Dame will have a bounce back year though.
I think he could too. But if you had, I don't think Dame, like you said, is going to continue to get worse. And I think if he played the season in Portland, he would have been fine. But overall, it's a fine trade. And I'm going to agree with Cody. I'm going to say it to the day I die. I think the Blazers had just as good of a chance to win a championship with Dame than they do now. Because Cody said it best in a pod after we drafted Scoot. Dame's 31 years old. You have a lottery pick. You have all this ammo to go trade for a star and win with Damian Lillard. So when Scoot, his 20% chance he's as good as Damian Lillard. If Scoot ends up like Damian Lillard and you are in the same position in 2030 and you have a lottery pick and you have assets, what are you going to do? Are you just going to run it back again and say, let's trade Scoot and restart? Or are you going to finally make a move? I just think this whole thing with Joe Cronin, and like you said, it's safe and it's just pushing the important decisions down the line. And it's a sucks for a fan because we can't get mad, but I'm not happy. So it's just wait and see. It's constant wait and see. And it's going to be like that. We're not making the playoffs next year. We realistically need to suck next year because we still don't have that guy. We need to get that guy. And then,
do you think?
To be fair, go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that was funny. I was going to say, do you think if Scoot became Ja Morant, that level, is that a successful draft?
Yeah, no, it
is.
I think, okay. He has to be obviously good for it to be a successful draft.
Right, that's what I'm
I heard
saying.
that question. I was like, is he going to?
What's the level? How? Is he going to be
I think it's less about looking at that draft individually, but if one of Scoot or Shaden turns into, say, 7, 8-time All-Star. Like that's how much we need to be because Kyle Lowry's a 6-time All-Star.
What about Dame? What's Dame?
That's a great question. Let me look.
I don't think he's more than 8 for sure.
Oh, he's 8.
I don't know.
Because I was absolutely talked out of my rear end right there with helmet.
7, 8 time is pretty rare. I was thinking like a 3 or 4 time.
Dame is a 7-time All-Star. Okay. Wait, no. It's a 7-time All-NBA, 8-time All-Star.
Okay.
So, say one of them gets to be a 6-time All-Star. Just basically, for 5 seasons, a top 20 player.
Okay.
I think that's fair. One of the two.
Yeah.
Then you can look at it and say, okay, maybe that works. But, like, that's what it has to be. Because if Scoot is just who's an average point guard in the NBA?
Mike Conley.
If Scoot's a Mike Conley's pretty good in his heyday. If Scoot is in his heyday, Mike Conley was a couple times was an all-star.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sure. Mike Conley. If Scoot's Mike Conley and if Shaedon Sharpe is Monte Ellis, terrible comp. But if Shaedon Sharpe's Monte Ellis, then that's terrible. Like you put so much stock into these two guys, and I'm like, I can't say Sharpe's going to be some stud. I can't.
You said it best. We need that other guy, and
thank you.
Or Damian Lillard has to be the guy.
Even Damian Lillard never got a chance to play with that guy until now. Giannis. Hopefully they're healthy next year. Off topic, but just real quick, Dame's playoff luck absolutely sucks. But that's for another topic. Giannis being out, that is tough. We need that other guy, and like the NBA is just morphing so much in the last like 10 years. I mean, look at the league 10 years ago. That like team construction, like you had your Kobe Bryant type guard and then your skilled center Kevin Garnett, Gasol type guy, and you could win a championship. And now we have like Victor, we have 6'8" or taller guys who can play like guards. I mean, so it's just like we're going to need that guy, even if Scoot becomes even as good as Damian Lillard. Like you're still just with the Victor. Did I say Victor? I think I said
probably not going to be the best player on the championship team.
Thank you. That's a great point. Scoot Henderson is. I will say this: he's never going to be the best player on a championship team. There's been one guard since 2010 who's been the best player on the championship team, and it's Steph Curry, and he's going to go down as a top 10 player of all time, probably.
And he had 2 All-Stars.
Before that, it was like D Wade maybe, and that was it, right?
Yeah,
a young Kobe, and Shaq was probably better. So being a guard, like you have to be at the 3 or the 4.
Shaedon can't be that guy. I don't think
Shaedon's a 2. If we try to play Shaedon at the 3, then we're back in the 3 guard.
How tall is he? He's pretty tall. He's like what
6'5", 6'6", probably.
He's not 6'6". He's 6'5" at best. Probably 6'4".
But he jumps like he's gonna be 12 feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like look at like Jason Tatum. That's the league today.
Yeah.
Victor's going to probably be in the playoffs next year or the year after. Like when we supposedly contend, that's when Victor's going to be in his prime.
Gosh, Victor's so good. He's going to be a top 5 player next year, bro. He might get first or second. He probably gets second team All NBA.
God, I hope his legs snap.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Any other moves?
Sourpod.
Like the Mavs are in the finals now. I guess like Luka is a guard.
Luka's generational, but by the way, I'm just saying, like the Mavs is one of those where it's like you don't have to have this team. You can win, like I said, you can win with 2 guards. Obviously, Luka's like 6'7", so he's not like that. But like again, if you have Dame, if like they went from a team that missed the play-ins last year, and they were playing fully healthy. They had Kyrie and Luka playing until they were out, and then they tanked the rest of the year. They missed the plans, and they were a 7 seed at the trade deadline this year, and they made very smart around the edges moves that aren't just like Larry Nance.
No, I wouldn't call them around the edges.
PJ Washington was Daniel Gafford and PJ were not like they were now.
I don't know. I'm just
saying
they
basically traded
I'm just saying I don't think it's around the edges. I think PJ Washington was one of the better assets you could get at the deadline.
Well, I know what you're saying, but like when I say around the edges, they didn't trade for a star. They just got good quality role. They got good quality role players.
You know what's crazy? It's this Mavericks team. By the way, it's a bad comp because Luka and Kyrie are better historically, but if there was no Golden State boogeyman, this could have been the Blazers in 19 easily. Just a backcourt that's cooking with great role players.
Yeah.
Easily.
Kind of. I mean, I don't want to discredit the Mavs, but
I'm not.
because the Boston Celtics playoff run has been way more Mickey than the Mavs. But
Cody, would you rather have Dame in 2019 or this year's Luka?
This year's Luka.
I could go either way. It doesn't really matter.
What were you saying, Cody?
But I mean, the Mavs are a 5 seed. They play Clippers. Kawhi's out, gets injured, and then they play 2 young, inexperienced teams. Like their route is obviously way harder than Boston, but like.
So question.
I don't know. I'd be really shocked if the Mavs won the
So
finals.
question. All this time we've been talking about like, oh, the West is so elite. It's a great time to rebuild. When you could easily argue the West is as wide open as it's ever been, and this was a great chance to go win a championship.
Yeah, I think it was.
But wide open implies there's like 9-10 teams that could do it.
I think there definitely was this year.
I agree. We weren't able to go ahead, Cody.
If the Blazers made their move in 2022, built around Dame, got that star we wanted with all our ammo that we had, then we could be at least contending in today's era.
And again, I hate the conversation where Cody can say that, and then
I can't tell you you're wrong. You're probably wrong.
Someone would comment below and say, "Well, what do you want to do? Just contend?" Well, that's what every team is just contending until they win the championship. Like this Luka Kyrie thing. No, if they lost in the second round, which they very well could have, if like should have gone to Game 7 if Shea doesn't foul PJ Washington in the corner, like then everyone's like, this Luka Kyrie thing isn't going to work. But to win a championship, you get these breaks, like. And
also, guess what? They're not going to win the championship this year, and they're not going to go back next year.
All right,
but I just like it's tough. I mean,
if the Mavs win,
we could pull that up in a couple weeks, and West doesn't look good.
If the Mavs win the finals, then that's arguably an example of 2 backcourts doing it. I know Luka's 6'7", but like I don't feel like Luka is that guy in terms of he's that guy. What am I trying to say? Like he's not that big enough of a impact player. Like he's not a Giannis. He's not a. You know what I'm trying to say? Like he's a guard. That's what I'm saying. He's a guard.
Yeah. But he plays like a big.
But I think I truly think
he averages like double-digit rebounds in the playoffs.
He brings the ball up. He does his shifty moves and he kicks. Like that's not like a dominant 6'8" type player.
He doesn't play defense. Is what you're saying.
I think the Mavericks going all the way this year. Just watching that and just seeing like again how wide open the West was with like. Literally every single the Thunder could have made the finals. The Mavericks could have. The Clippers could have beat the Mavericks in the first round if Kawhi's healthy. The Suns, I mean, they sucked, but like they could have. The Timberwolves, like there's so many teams. Like we were talking like the Lakers could beat the Nuggets in the first round. There's a lot of teams.
I think they should have.
Exactly, and like I just truly think like looking back, if the Blazers make some move, that they could have been one of those teams too, and. Again, I don't know you want to say you don't just want to be one of those teams, but we're never going to be the perennial favorite, I don't think, ever in our lifetime. Like we're always just going to be one of those teams that could win a championship. It's just why didn't you just want to do it then? So that's it.
Were there any moves?
I'm sure if Joe Cronin could see into the future, he would do things differently.
Yeah, but at the time, it's not like I was saying the West was stacked. I was just saying that any team could win. I think how it always is. Yeah, it's always going to be that way from now on. There's
the Golden State era was just so unfortunate for Dame. I mean, we
can like morph into our future in a way. Were there any more big trades, moves from Joe Cronin after Damian Lillard?
No, we didn't. No. Okay. Delano Banton.
By the way,
actually the only trade we've made since then, which is fine.
Okay. Kind of off topic, but like Jeremy Grant, he's kind of valuable in terms of like a contending team would want him. So like. I don't know, and I don't think he's a great player, but I don't think he's too important for like our near future veteran role play. I mean, someone's got to take shots, and that was Jeremy last year. But I'm just saying, like as he gets old, we might want to trade him within the next year or two, just because we don't want him to get too old, and a contending team can still want him, and we can get a lot back for him.
I think going into this offseason, the 2 untouchable guys is Shaden and Scoots. And I think the next third is probably Ayton because he was so good at the end of the year. But
Ayton.
even then, like Ayton is expendable if you want to go with a center at number 7. If you get Klingon, like he realistically is not. He's touchable.
He had the worst defensive rating as a center this season. How do you guys feel about that? One of the worst. I'm not going to say
Well,
the.
I think that's just what's going to happen.
I think that's a
Suck.
byproduct of having traffic cones on the perimeter.
All right, fair.
Yeah,
So
but I
that's
think
what I
this
wanted to
offseason, I think you're trading Brogdon, and I think we could easily trade one of Ant or Jeremy. I lean Ant more.
I would
and I wouldn't
be
be mad
fine
at it
with-
at this point. I was so in on Ant back when we drafted Scoot, and I was saying like Ant's going to win most improved. Ant's going to average 25, 28 points per game, and like he was pretty good to start the year, and then he was hurt. Then he was good
Blazers
when
are
he
gonna
came
have
back.
4 All-Stars.
But like at this point, like I don't care who I like or don't like on the team. Just like
God, don't care
make the
anymore.
roster look competent, please.
Yeah,
I cannot keep doing so many guards.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
You can play 5 forwards. You can't play 5 guards.
You
What do you do
play
if we
5
drafted
forwards,
the
you're
guard?
Nets.
Oh my gosh! If we draft a guard, I'm suspending the channel and the podcast is over,
Okay.
Yeah,
Are you sure that's more stuff we can rant about?
dude. Okay, yeah, no, but it'll be a fun rant if we draft him. Like honestly, it's one of those things like when we're playing these dice games when we're together in Montana and we're like, if we're not going to win, let's just lose in the most unlucky way so we can complain. If we're not going to get a good forward, let's just get a guard so we can complain.
Wait, when was the draft last season? Because I was definitely not home in Oregon, but you said it's June 26th?
It's June 20. It was probably somewhere around there. Oh, it was June 22nd last year.
Really? I was home. that
Really?
way. No.
Really?
How's that possible? I was
I don't know.
at college. How's that possible?
I don't know, man.
I don't know,
June-
Cody.
June 22nd.
Do you want proof? Do you want me to go back and look?
Yes, because we were like Victor, and I remember being in my old room. So
We did
that
a
doesn't
live
make
stream.
sense.
Maybe you're
yeah.
thinking lottery. Draft lottery?
Yeah, that's it. Because Victor was a lock. Yeah, that's why. That's
Yeah.
it.
I mean, he was a lock for draft too, but
Oh my gosh, if we just got Victor.
yeah, if we
So-
had Victor, Dame would have stayed.
What do you want to see from the Blazers the next 365 days, guys?
I want to
lose as
see.
many games as possible, but have a good team.
No, I want
That's
to.
not
I
how it
want to win a
works.
championship, Cody. I'm kidding. I want roster construction, like actual a competent roster. I don't want all these. Like it just seems like I just
Tired of getting hyped over
want to get
stupidest
on the
things.
path of a finished product.
I don't want to be happy about ping pong balls anymore.
If you're trading Ant, like a player like that, what are you getting in return, ideally?
Dude, what are we talking about right now? This is what the podcast has come to every single time. It's, are we getting 2 first? Are we getting a second? Are we going to get ping pong balls? Are we not going to get ping pong balls? It's not about, are we going to win games?
All right, you know what? Let's focus on the summer, the draft. Let's talk a
Oh,
tiny bit
yeah.
draft before the end. I feel like
Sure.
that would be a great way to end it because that is probably the next
It's
event.
year 3 of it being the most important night of the season.
I know you guys did like lots of podcasts about mock drafts, but you know, as the most uneducated about the draft class this year, fill me in a little bit. I know SAR's out of the question for us, and that we're 7, and that it's very open.
Yeah. So there's like 3 or 4 guards that are projected to probably go top 10. Hopefully they go all before us. And there's realistically 4 forwards that we would be fine getting. There's a guy, Ron Holland, who we saw actually at the Les Schwab. He lost to Jackson Shellstead in West Lynn. He played
What
for
team was he
Duncanville.
on?
He was on Duncanville.
Okay.
Then there's Cody Williams out of Colorado, who is Jalen Williams' younger brother.
That dude is good, Jalen.
Yeah, we got Matis Buzelis, who's another forward, like 6'10". And then we've got Zachary Risa-Cher, who's like French, and he's like 6'8". So I think it's going to end up being one of these things where there's going to be 4 forwards, maybe 2 of them go before 7, and we're just going to take the best available forward. That's what I hope we do. We have
I will
options. Like
say-
7's not a bad spot to be for this draft.
It's not a bad spot, but the other thing, Cody, and people need to realize this, is there's a lot of these players, even the lottery guys, are going to be like high-end role players. Like, I don't think, of course, in every draft,
Cody,
in every
I was
draft, there's like 1 or 2 guys, but
I was listening to something, and it was drafting first overall in this draft is like you're trying to draft at best Tobias Harris type player. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to say it right now. I don't even think this is a hot take at all. there will be at least like two,
No,
you know, top 10 probably, top 20 definitely in a few year player type players in this draft. Like,
yeah, there's always guys that
they're going to
pop.
be out there. So even if you call it a weak draft class, like, I'm sorry, but there's going to be,
Yeah.
you know, a face of a could be championship team in the 2020s sometime with this draft class. And we totally have an opportunity to go get that. Obviously, we should go for a forward and hope we strike gold. And I think that, yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a good thing is in our pre-draft workout so far, we haven't brought any of the big names in. We brought a bunch of second-round names and late first-round pick guys. But I would want to say like 80%, 90% are forwards. Like, it seems there's a clear message of what we're going to do. Now, we said that last year. We said there was a clear message what the Blazers were going to do, and we didn't do it. But I don't
And
know.
our
Now
second pick, our second pick,
Unique situation, I feel.
What was
our
that?
second pick, pure swing. I want like go for a Giannis type player because Giannis was a late draft pick. Jokic was a late draft pick. Like, if you draft a guard for our second pick,
If you do another Chris Murray type player,
I'd be
where
more
you're
mad if you
drafting
drafted a
fourth,
guard's. I'd be more mad if you drafted the guard second than first. No, that's a lie. But I'd be mad if
I'll be mad if you drafted a guard in general,
And either one, yeah.
especially a point guard, because there's a couple good point guards in this draft. Like if you draft, I've seen some mock drafts saying we're going to get Nikola Topic, who's one of the point guards, and it's like, why? If you talked all this game about Scoot, trust him. Trust that he's going to be that guy.
The people who write those articles don't know what's going on
Well,
in Portland.
sometimes I don't know if Joe knows what's going on either.
That's fair.
Um,
That's fair.
I think that's all we got, though. Is there anything you want to talk about before we end? Unfortunately, this offseason is a much more boring than last year because it's really just all about the draft. Like,
and Dame's not on the roster.
free agency isn't going to be fun. I mean, it's not like free agency was ever fun for Portland, but like there was a little sliver of hope when we had Dame because we were trying to win. But yeah, this year you're not going to see like, oh, let's trade the 7th pick for OG Anunoby. That's just not the vids you're going to see. We're going to talk a lot of draft. It's in 3.5 weeks at this point or something like that. And it's going to be a fun, important night. I don't think the Blazers will trade one of their first 2 picks. I think we're going to draft 2 lottery guys, and hopefully they're both forwards. So anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Who you guys got in the finals?
Celtics in
Celtics.
6.
In 6 and 6?
I'll go
I agree.
Celtics. I'll go Celtics in 7.
Okay.
I think we could. It's gonna be 6 though. Like
I was
do
gonna
5?
probably originally root for the Mavs because
Pritchard
I like the underdog, but and then my roommate started yapping about Kyrie's better than Dame, stuff like that. So then now I'm rooting for the Celtics and they're gonna freaking sweep them.
Wait,
So
Cody, who has the highest offensive rating in the playoffs?
in the whole season, you mean?
Oh, sorry, whole season.
Yeah, Peyton Pritchard.
Westland's finest.
Yeah,
remember when we were talking about 3rd pick and Anthony Simons for Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard?
yikes. Yeah,
What
well,
a fun time.
I'm
But that's
gonna
all
root
we
for the
got today.
Celtics.
You said Celtics?
I'm gonna root for the Celtics, and I'm gonna predict the Celtics.
You know what?
Gotcha.
Celtics in 6 is the smart play, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Celtics in 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could really go anyway. But if Luka and Kyrie win, they're very up there for one of the best backcourts of all time. But that's a conversation for another day. Thank you guys for listening. Let us know below. Just what are your thoughts on Joe Cronin as a GM? Are you still salty from the debacle that was 2023? Or are you moving on and you're hoping that we get a guy in this draft and hopefully Scooter Shaden is a guy going forward? If you're listening on Spotify, give us 5 stars. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. And of course, go follow our TikTok and Instagram, rcr.trivia. Links in the description. We will see you guys for the next podcast. Peace.